Hey. They tried to tell me that aliens built the pyramids. It's funny because they probably did.
Fuck I'm doing talking about pineal glands. Fuck I'm doing talking about pineal glands. Ancient ways of Sumerians. Ain't nothing wrong with a righteous man.
This is my Anunnaki flow. This be my Anunnaki flow. Yo, I got that Anunnaki flow. You are now on planet X. I'm the god, show your respect.
Expected to approve the Pfizer vaccine this week, so just in a short matter of time. Polls suggest the majority of Canadians will in fact roll up their sleeves, but some will not. And at least one province, Ontario, says anyone who does not will likely face ongoing restrictions while the rest of the population gets back to sort of normal life, Laura. Laura McQuillan I'm referring to, looking at Ontario's plan as the health minister announced yesterday.
Yeah, some kind of a card that you would carry that proves you've had your 2 shots of the vaccine. Could be 1 shot if it is a 1-shot vaccine, but most look like they will be 2. So once you're fully immunised, you'd have what's been described as a vaccination card, vaccination passport. You'd take it when you go to do things that you can't currently do. Once those businesses or places reopen, Health Minister Christine Elliott gave some more details yesterday on just how it might work and where those restrictions might lift for you if you can prove you've been vaccinated.
It's going to be really important for people to have for travel purposes, perhaps for work purposes, for going to theaters or cinemas or any other places where people will be in closer physical contact when we get through the worst of the pandemic. So yes, that will be essential for people to have that.
So not mandatory to get the shot, but if you don't get it, you might be opting out of those things that this card enables.
Having that immunity certificate doesn't change much in terms of my behavior, unless and until you get to a critical mass of people in the population where you can envision only people with the certificate, only people who've been vaccinated, being able to congregate in certain settings like restaurants, movie theaters, etc. So until we have a significant number of people who've been vaccinated, it's not practically meaningful because people who are mixed in with the rest of the population will still need to undertake those precautions that we're having today.
I think the issue, the discussion we need to have amongst ourselves, with ourselves, is the issue of what is personal responsibility versus what is a requirement of law. And what are you as an individual willing to do to protect yourself and those people around you? Would I be, if I lived on a desert island, would I necessarily want to have a COVID vaccine? I don't know. But if I was going to visit my 80-year-old mother, she's not in the nursing home, but if she was, would I, if vaccine was available, would I be responsible in going in there, visiting lots of older people without being vaccinated, if a vaccine was available to me? So I think we all have to ask ourselves those questions. And that's when you ask yourself those questions, you tend to come up with the right answers. And then you avoid questions about law and mandatory natures of vaccines. I think the other thing that Maria reflected to me earlier was, you know, the reality is most people want these vaccines. This is a massive potential victory for global health. People are demanding these vaccines. People want these vaccines. They want these vaccines to be rolled out carefully and safely. And Mariangela, Sumia, Kate and so many others, Anna Maria, working so hard here and around the world to ensure that process and give people the necessary reassurances. But the reality is the vaccine story is a good news story. It is the victory of human endeavour, potentially over a microbial adversary, as the DG has called it many, many times. And there's hope with that. And yes, we have to continue to bring people along on that journey, but I don't think we should necessarily focus on the negative aspects here. We need to convince people, and we need to persuade, and we need to dialogue on this issue. I'm not a great believer. I agree with Kate. There are specific circumstances in which governments may have to require specific mandates for vaccination. But I think all of us who work in public health would rather avoid that as a means of getting people vaccinated. I think we are much better served to present people with the data, present people with the benefits, and let people make up their own minds, obviously within reason, because there are certain circumstances, as I've alluded to, where I would believe that it would be the only responsible thing would be to be vaccinated in future when the vaccine is fully available.
recently and said it would be okay for the government to force us to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
You back
If
that
the
up
vaccine,
legally?
yes, if the vaccine is safe and effective and necessary. Remember, the government could never force you to take a vaccine to protect yourself. If they developed a vaccine against heart disease or cancer, you and I, Larry, would take that vaccine or because we wanted to, but they couldn't make us do it because it only protects us. But if a vaccine is designed to protect us against typhoid Mary walking down the street and infecting us, the government has the right to compel that. Supreme Court decision, 1905, Jacobson versus Massachusetts, smallpox vaccination, and the government was permitted to compel. Many states have done the same thing.
He came up and he said, if it's safe, if it's effective. And I think those are the big ifs. That's the playground where this debate is really happening. And I think in the end, he and I would end up in the same place in that debate. I will make a minor dispute, which is the Jacobson case, which was decided in 1905, was not a case where the state was claiming the power to go into somebody's home and plunge a needle into their arm or kick down their door and take them by force. The Jacobson actually was a guy who was resisting taking a smallpox vaccine. He was from Cambridge, Massachusetts. And the penalty for not taking the vaccine was a $5 fine. So it was like a traffic ticket. He decided to take it. He had been injured in a previous vaccine, so he didn't want to take this one. He took the case to the Supreme Court. He lost. And the remedy was he paid a $5 fine. So I think it's there's a big constitutional chasm between, that remedy, which is paying a fine, and actually going in and holding somebody down and forcibly injecting them. And I'm not convinced that the Supreme Court of the United States at this point would uphold that kind of law 9-0 or 8-1 at all. So let me just say that. Let me now go to the initial place where I think we're in agreement.
More on who can legally require people to get the vaccine. Good morning to you, Helen. Thanks so much for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And this is interesting. So many people are already talking about this. And the big question everyone has, can employers require their employees to have the vaccine before coming back to work?
And the answer to that question is generally speaking going to be yes. Because employers set the terms and conditions of employment, employers are going to be able to require that their employees get the vaccination. Now, that said, there will be exceptions to that. An employee may ask for an accommodation under either the Americans with Disabilities Act, asserting that they have some medical condition that prevents them from being vaccinated, or they might claim an exemption under Title VII, claiming that they have a sincerely held religious belief that would prevent them from being vaccinated. But other than those two instances, the answer we anticipate will be yes.
What about in places where people are paying to go, not being paid to be there? Places like airplanes and sports arenas. Can the vaccine be required for admittance into those kinds of places?
I think that given the severity of the pandemic, getting the vaccine is going to become almost commonplace. There is an anticipation that foreign governments may require certification of vaccination, perhaps appended to a passport, in order to enter the country. So the more that this continues, it's going to be difficult to navigate in society without having the vaccine. So it's going to become a matter of course. But yes, there is a likelihood that you may be required in certain instances to take the vaccination or to show proof of the vaccination.
Ed, let's talk about vaccines for a moment, because it would seem as if multiple vaccines are on the horizon. Would Delta consider mandating employees be vaccinated in order to work, or even passengers be vaccinated in order to fly?
Well, we haven't decided that yet, Craig. We are looking at and certainly talking to the authorities about first and foremost, how do we get our employees vaccinated? I think for international travel, it will become a requirement, whether it's the airline does it or some international authorities do it. We're going to strongly encourage that airline employees all get vaccinated. Airline employees are frontline workers and will be given priority as a frontline worker to access to the vaccine. Myself, I can't wait to get vaccinated, and we're going to strongly encourage all our people to make sure they get that protection, that inoculation from this deadly virus.
As expected, vaccine opponents are raising objections, saying a new partially tested and fast-track vaccine could do more harm than good. Others are just skeptical.
I'm going to wait 2 or 3 months and see how it works.
I don't trust it. I wouldn't let my family take it, and I don't want to take it.
And pediatrician Dr. Richard Pan says the public also needs to know there may be side effects.
And I think it is very important. We're very transparent with people about what to expect from the vaccine. So there have been indications that the vaccine does have some temporary side effects like fever or some other symptoms that go away.
So far, the vaccines the FDA is reviewing have not been tested in pregnant women or young children. More research must be done.
But unfortunately, we may not have a vaccine available for children by the time we have the next school year.
Dr. Pan says it's simply too early to know if children would be required to get a, but he says it's unlikely.
But researchers don't really know how safe the vaccine is for pregnant women or fetuses or people with weakened immune systems. So how well does it work? This vaccine is effective in preventing COVID, but for how long? Pfizer followed people for 2 months, but anything past that is uncertain.
Problem that a lot of people have is that this was fast-tracked and they get nervous about
They do.
possible potential side effects, and we don't know what those are going to be. And then there's a lot of people that are very uncomfortable with the idea of getting very sick after they take the vaccine, which seems to happen with 80% of the people that take it. And so they're concerned about that.
Wait, 80% of people who are taking this vaccine?
Yes.
That's not what I heard.
Well, that's what Bill Gates has said.
Bill Gates?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we can look it up.
Yeah, we'll play it for you. Pull it off of, I
yeah.
know. It's weird. When people say that, people are like, wait, what?
After the second dose, at least 80% of participants experienced a systemic side effect, ranging from severe chills to fevers. So, are these vaccines safe?
Well, the FDA, not being pressured, will look hard at that. The FDA is the gold standard of regulators, and their current guidance on this, if they stick with that, is very, very appropriate. And you know, the side effects were not super severe. That is, it didn't cause permanent health problems for the things there. Moderna did have to go with a fairly high dose, and so to get the antibodies. Some of the other vaccines are able to go with lower doses to get responses that are pretty high, including the J&J and the Pfizer. And so there's a lot of characteristics of these vaccines. It's great that we have multiple of them that are
Bill,
going out there. And yes, I think
you know the data
US
better than I do.
government-
But Bill, the data showed that everybody with a high dose had a side effect.
Yeah, but some of that is not dramatic, where it's just super painful. But yes, we need to make sure there's not severe side effects. The FDA, I think, will do a good job of that, despite the pressure.
Are you living? Are you existing? Gotta start living, can't be resistant. No matter how you get it, just be persistent. Consistent, from not becoming statistic. Realistic, no lie.